Hello and good morning. I'm going to do another bread recipe today. So today I'm going to do like pizza dough, but I'm going to use it for bread. I'll probably save enough of it to make myself like a little personal sized pizza. But I'm going to use pizza style dough to make a bread loaf or a couple bread loaves or maybe rolls. We'll see how I feel when I get there. But what we're gonna do then is like a normal bread recipe, like a normal regular loaf recipe of bread. And it's gonna be a little bit wetter than usual, although quite a bit drier than the last roll that I made. And I'm gonna add a little olive oil to it when I'm done mixing the ingredients, or when I'm very close to the end of mixing the ingredients. I'm gonna add a little olive oil into it, and then we're gonna let it rest in a bowl in olive oil. You'll let it double in size, punch it down, cut it up into pieces, shape it, let it rise again, and then bake it. This water, by the way, has nothing to do with the bread. That's for my Nescafe instant coffee. Classy. Classy kill, actually. Alright, be back. Okay, so I know I did this in the last video, but I also know that almost nobody's watching these, so I'm going to do everything from scratch again. So I'm going to do the yeast. I'm going to get some warm water. I want it to be about 100 degrees. You don't want it to be too hot or it'll kill the yeast. And if it's cold, it'll still work, but it'll take much longer for the yeast to activate. So I'm going to get it where it feels a little bit more than warm to the touch, but not at all hot. And then I'm gonna get 2 ounces of that. This is the yeast I'm using. It's my favorite. I also like the Red Star though. They're just, they work and they're cheap. And this is not the instant yeast, it's the active dry. Fleischmann's calls it the original. Okay, and I'm gonna use this jar. Okay, a little bit more than warm. That's what we want. 2 ounces of that. Okay. So that's 2 ounces of a little bit more than warm. And that's 100 and... Well, once the water mixes together, it's going to be right around 100. And if it's a little bit hotter, like if it's 106 or 108, don't worry about it, because we're going to add a little sugar. And that's going to be room temp. So when that mixes in there, you know what's going to happen. And when you mix in the yeast, if you mix it in all at once, it will get clumpy. You just have like clumps of yeast in there. So if you can mix it in gradually, stirring as you go, that'd be great. Get it off the spoon as best as I can. Push off the glass walls back into the water. I'm kind of sticky today. Okay, but anyway, when I set it down, you can see it's at the 2 ounce mark. It's going to be at around the 4 ounce mark once it's proved. And I'm going to, while I'm giving that, 5 to 15 minutes, let's start with the flour. I'm going to be using 3 cups of flour. If you feel like spooning the flour into the cup, you can. I think it fluffs up the flour a little bit. Two. And hey, this isn't precision, just so you know. And it doesn't matter if you're off a little bit or if a little extra spills or if you're a little short. Because the amount of water that I use, I'm not, I'm deciding right now how much water I'm going to use. I'm thinking last time I did like a park loaf, which was very hydrated. And I did 50% of the volume of flour in water. So I had 3 cups of flour and a cup and a half of water. So for this, I think I'm going to use, I don't know, I'll probably start with 8 ounces of water. I've got 2 right there. So I'm going to do that 2 plus 6. Stir that up. See how that goes. I'm going to let the yeast prove. For a few more minutes here. And I'll start with a half a cup of warm water. That'll be 4 ounces. Oh, I gotta put the salt in first. So with salt, again, you can use whatever you want. I don't use iodized salt. You don't want to use salt that has a bunch of preservatives in it or anything either. Just want good old-fashioned salt, like dried salt from the ocean. This is Jacobson's sea salt. Two teaspoons. It's way easier to mix it in when it's dry. You're gonna get a nice, uniform distribution of the salt in the flour. I said this last time, so again, if you heard it already, sorry. But often I think, like, if I add all the salt when it's wet, what if it all gets stuck in one pocket of the bread and there's like a salty part of the bread and the rest of it's tasteless? Okay, so there's a half cup of water. Don't stir that with the whisk because it just doesn't do a good job and it gets stuck inside the whisk. And you'll see there's a real fine line between not enough water and too much water. So get a good feel for the consistency of the dough should be. Because there will definitely be times when you put too much water in and you gotta add some flour. And when you're putting the flour in, all of a sudden you realize you put too much flour in and you gotta add a little water. So this dough is gonna look like cornflakes or rice at this ratio of 3 cups of flour to half a cup of water. I'll show you. And I'm just hand mixing it. This isn't enough to make a dough yet. So it's just little pieces like that, isn't that funny? You can see the free flour in there. So some of that flour is bound up with water. Some of it's just powder in there. It's like chunks. You see that? Okay, and then I've got 2 ounces in the jar. That's now over the 4-ounce mark. I proved it up nice and quick. See that? That's the 2 where we started. We were just ever so slightly above the 2. We're ever so slightly above the 4. And you can see that's liquid on the bottom. And that's all bubbles. So that yeast is really active. So we're going to stir in what was 2 ounces of water and yeast. A little bit of sugar that we use to activate the yeast. And how much sugar did I use? I have no idea. Just like that much. Less than a sugar packet. Maybe around a sugar packet. Okay, so this is going to give us 6 ounces. I'm going to need a couple more ounces at least. I'm going to need 8 to 10 ounces to get this to dough. Last time I think I used 12 parts of 2 for the yeast, 14. Okay, so there's 2 more ounces. Let's see what that gets us. It already looks like it's going to start incorporating. Okay, well, I guess you can see how long I stir it. I was going to pause the video, but I'll just stir it. Needs more water. 2 more ounces. I'm not using quite the whole 2 ounces yet. Yeah, that looks good. That's it right there. So initially it looks like I didn't use enough water. And as I keep stirring it, I let it rest for a little bit. You'll see it's going to look good. When you're stirring here, you'll really feel it starting to resist you. And that's the bread starting to build up its gluten structure. That's good, that's normal. Just keep it moving in the bowl. It's kind of exhausting, honestly, stirring with my hand. It's about 10 ounces of water. So just ever so slightly, probably more than 3 cups of flour. Now I'm going to add in some olive oil. So just in case there's like olive oil people out there, I know this is a global blend instead of a single source olive oil, which is what I want. But what I couldn't get at the time, it's like maybe a tablespoon to 2 of olive oil. But that's that California Olive Ranch brand. It does smell like good olive oil, and it does taste like good olive oil. I know it's a global blend, which isn't ideal, but I don't know, man, it's pretty good for the money. So that's all I can say about it. So I'm using it, and it smells just like olives. And it has that like taste in the back of your mouth. It's definitely real olive oil. And just like a note to anybody, because I didn't know this at first, but if you store your olive oil next to the stove, you want to make sure that it's far enough away from the stove that it's not getting hot, because it'll oxidize. But I didn't know that. I had no idea. So I'm just kind of pressing into the bread and folding it over. This is not a fancy technique or anything, just pressing into the side with the spoon, folding it over. It's going to be almost impossible to do while holding the camera, but I'll show you. So I'm just pressing into it, flipping it over, pressing into it, and then it would work way better with two hands, but this is what I got. Folding it over, and I'm just going to keep doing that while I stir it. Because at this point, when I stir with the spoon, it is a loaf. It is a lump of dough. It's not stirrable, so I'm basically just kneading it with a spoon. The gluten structure is getting very strong. My arm's getting very tired. I don't know how people do this. Like a bunch of loaves a day of this, you have really strong arms. Okay. I'm going to preheat the oven. And the heat coming out of the oven from the preheat will help this rise. Okay. Gonna put a little extra olive oil in here, just around the dough. It's gonna sit in the olive oil. Why am I doing that? He's a good friend of mine who really knows how to make dough like this and make pizza dough. Told me to do it. Give it a little coating of olive oil. Just gonna let it sit in there for an indeterminate amount of time. I'm gonna check on it somewhere between now and 1 hour. I will see you then. Okay, so it's been raising for 1 hour. It's not quite where I want it yet, but I'm going to show you what it looks like. It's definitely doubled in volume. But I'm going to give it, like another 20-30 minutes, and I'm I'm actually going to make some sauce and probably make a little pizza with some of this. So I'm going to put the video on pause again, and then in about 20 minutes, once it's raised up, we'll pull it out of there, push it down a little bit, and divide it. Okay. So it's been another 15 or 20 minutes. I'm going to take the bread out of the bowl. I'm just going to separate it into sections here so that it can be a little pizza section. And then one loaf, I guess. Another little pizza section. You have to let this go a little more. Okay, so ultimately I'm going to take it on this pan right here, if you can see that. It's a pizza pan. All that coloring on it is you call it's seasoned, so it's not seasoning, it's not flavoring or anything, but it's seasoned from baked on oil. And that keeps your bread from sticking. I'm going to add some more here. And since we're baking here at 450, I'm going to use avocado oil because that has a high smoke point. I'm just going to add another layer of season to this once it goes in the oven. Right. I'm going to just pop this on here though. We'll let that raise up a little bit more. I don't like to put cellophane on things, so we're just going to do that for now. Yeah, I don't think that's ready to go for the pizza dough the way I want it, so I'm just going to form them back into a like a ball here. And then I'm going to let it, I'm going to toughen it up a little again. And then I'm going to let it soften up. When you let it rest for a little while, it's going to soften up. Okay. And I'm just going to make this into a ball. And then I'm just going to give like 10 minutes, honestly. And then if this works out right, and if not, they're just going to become bread. But if they're soft enough for me to shape them and flexible enough for me to shape them, they're going to get stretched out into a little pizza crust. And you want the pizza crust to be really thin because when you put it in the oven, it's going to thicken up. It's going to raise a little bit before it actually cooks. Then we'll give it like a, I don't know, 6 or 7 minute bake. Maybe like a 5-minute bake, just to brown it up a little bit. Then I'll pull it out. I'll put some pizza sauce on it, a little bit of cheese. I don't have like mozzarella cheese right now, but yeah, I'm just making this for fun, so it doesn't matter. And then I'll put some like Colby Jack cheese on top, and I'll put it back in until the cheese melts, and then it's ready to go. Okay, so temperature is a big deal. And it's cold right now, and everything is taking a lot longer than normal. So that's why when you try and apply times to things, I don't know, it's kind of silly sometimes because it's not the same amount of time for the same thing. 2 different bakes or bread makings or whatever, 2 totally different times. But you can see the loaf is expanding. That's good. The pizza balls are forming. Like they're I don't know, congealing, incorporating. They're on the bottoms where I squeeze them all together. They're becoming just one piece of dough, which is great. But they're like cold to the touch, so 10 minutes is not going to be long enough. So I'm going to put it for another 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll check back. And when they're soft and kind of light feeling, and I can easily shape them, we'll make little pizza crusts out of them. Okay, I'm back. Let's take a look at our loaf. Oh, that looks good. The loaf looks really good. It's still a little firm. I could let it go longer. I think I'm going to call it though. I'm going to put an egg wash on this. I know that sounds fancy, but it's not. So I'm just going to put a little bit of water in a cup. Just literally like a very little bit. And then I'm going to crack this nice little speckled hen's egg from our girls over at the barn in here. Sorry if that sound is annoying. Gotta mix this together. Okay, looks good. Apply some egg wash here. The only thing I'm running into here is I use these already, so there's like a little bit of crustiness on this brush. I should have got a different brush. Anyway, it's not actually dirtiness, it's just like little pieces of whatever I was brushing on before. Okay, so I have this little pan here full of water. I'm going to put this on the bottom rack of the oven. Carefully. Oh, it's so hot in there. It's going to give me some steam in there. Oh. Okay, it's hot. Let that sit for a minute, and then I'm going to put this in. I don't know how long I'm going to have to bake it for. Look at that. Look how nice and pliable that dough turned out to be. That's great. That's exactly what I was looking for. I'm just going to work it out from the center towards the edges. If you do get a tear in here, you can just pinch it back together. You know, a lot of people put saran wrap over this when they're letting it dry. And that's so that you don't get that. See it dried out on the surface? So I do get that, and that's just going to become the bottom of the dough, and it won't matter anyway. But I don't want to put cellophane on my food. That's gross. So I just have to live with that. Okay, see how we're getting some nice transparency there? A little bit thicker on the edge. Yeah, there we go. I don't know, I'm really not an expert at this part, but I think that is pretty good. Okay, and again, this little pizza sheet here, which I got at Dollar General for like 10 bucks. As far as I can tell, it's just stainless steel, and then I heavily seasoned it with oil. I gave it another brushing here of avocado oil. Boy, this one's a lot thicker, huh? If I'm gonna ask my buddy if there's any special techniques to make this like more uniform, but that's pretty much what he told me to do. Some bubbles there. Look at that. See that? How nice that looks? That's great. Pretty thick crust on there. I'm just gonna live with that. Don't have a problem with a thick crust at all. Okay, so this is gonna go in first. I don't really need the water in there like for this. I'm not worried about that at all. It's more for the bread to let it, I wanna let it rise because it's gonna expand in there. I'm gonna put this in for like 5 minutes literally. And just let it get a little bake on it. And the reason for that is if you don't get a little bake on the crust first, and then you put on the sauce and the sauce and the cheese can cook and melt and be perfect and ready to go. and the dough of the pizza crust isn't cooked yet. So then, then you got a predicament. You have to overcook your cheese or leave your dough be undercooked. And this way you get a couple minutes of bake on it. And you have, like a semi-made crust then. And we're going to apply some of this nice sauce. And I'm just going to use Colby Jack cheese because that's what I have handy. And I don't want to buy special ingredients for what is not a fancy lunchtime snack on a Saturday. Okay, but that's looking good. You guys see that? Nice loaf there. It's nice, right? There's an air bubble on top. Got some nice egg wash on there. Look how much that sucker rose. It's a beefcake. Beefcake. Okay, we'll let that sit for 5 minutes. Then we're going to pop it in the oven. Okay, here we are. So, this loaf is ready to go. I'm going to pop this sucker in. It's looking amazing. You see that on there? Yep, okay. You don't have to do this. My buddy Dubs, who you'll meet on this channel when we go from bread baking to conspiracy theories, thinks this is like a nice touch. This is very cool, so I'm going to do it. And it does give the bread somewhere to go as it expands. So we'll see what that looks like. Okay, this is going to go in. I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm going to give it 15 minutes before I even check on it. And then I might have to throw some like tin foil on top of it if it's browning too rapidly. So that way, like you would with a turkey, so it doesn't have like direct exposure to the heat. Okay, there you go. So we'll check that in 15 minutes. Let me show you the pizza crusts. You can see how much they puffed up in just 5 minutes. You can see you're starting to get a little bit of browning on there. And the fact that they're so thick means I should have stretched them more, but I'm just not really good at that. I always think I'm going to rip it, so I wind up with this like real thick, like pita bread type pizza. Probably too much sauce, but whatever. I like me some pizza sauce. I'm going to put these in together, so that might affect the baking time. But you know how to tell if the bread's done, right? Just flip it over, give it a knock. If it sounds hollow, it's probably good. Okay. Okay, I'll pop those in and we'll check back in another 5-10 minutes. Okay, so that was 10 minutes on the pizzas. And I'm going to pull these out of here. I gotta hang tight. It's looking good in there. And in 5 minutes I am going to put a piece of aluminum foil over top of that bread. Okay, here's my 2 pizzas. They're looking good. I put a little sprinkling of bacon on there. Chopped up bacon pieces here. And if you're thinking, why didn't I put this on before I put it in the oven? That's because I didn't think about it. My main focus is on the bread, I guess. Okay. So check this out, where the cheese, see there's no stick, right? And even where the cheese sat on the seasoned pan, the cheese doesn't stick. I mean, that's how you know that thing is anti-stick. It's more anti-stick than Teflon and no chemicals. It's just avocado oil. It's kind of good, a little cheese snack. And then let me show you the bread. Boy, that looks good, doesn't it? I think that looks good. Okay, and in 3 minutes I'm going to put a piece of tin foil on top of the bread, and then I'm going to wait 10 more minutes, and then I'm going to pull it out. And then I'll bring the camera back when I do that. Okay, so I'm going to pull the bread out here. About 25 minutes at 450. Nice egg wash bread. The pizzas were delicious. I'm a little bit ashamed to say that they've all been eaten already, but that's the way it is. And here is the bread. I think that looks awesome. Let's give it the old knock test and see what it sounds like. If it has to go back in, it certainly can. We're sticking to the bottom of the glass tray. That'll be interesting. I might have to sit there until it cools down. I'd prefer to put it on the wire rack, but that might be the way the cookie crumbles on this one. Let's see what we can do here. Free it up. Well, they don't usually stick, but boy, is it frustrating when they do. There we go. Not too bad. Couple sticky spots in there, I guess. I think it needs 5 more minutes. So I'm going to put it back in. It's very hot. So that's 30 minutes. And if I was cooking a big loaf of bread, I would do usually like 20 and 10, or maybe 25 and 10. This is still a pretty big loaf, but it's smaller. And it's like longer and flatter, so it should have more surface area exposed to the hot air. I think I just disturbed the crust. You know, when it stuck to the glass pan and I had to unstick it with a metal spatula, I think I disturbed the crust, and that's why I'm not getting the knocking. But I'm going to call this done regardless of what sound I get, but I am going to do the knock test again. There we go. A little bit less knock than I usually get. But again, I am confident that that's going to be fine after 30 minutes. I did open and close the door a lot. I know that's what you might be thinking. But still, I'm not worried about that at all. That's going to be cooked. It looks delicious. It's going to taste delicious. This makes a great loaf of bread. Real easy to make. You can see it's a little bit more time consuming than the super hydrated one. Because in that version, and I also spent some time making the pizzas too. But in the other version, you just sort of pour the dough into the bowl and go. So that does save probably 5 or 6 minutes. So my runtime right now in the video, I'm gonna probably edit out a few minutes. We'll see when I watch the video again. But my runtime here of like actually doing stuff was 40 minutes. All right. Thanks for watching.